Good evening, and welcome to the Shrewsbury School Committee meeting of Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. My name is Jason Palich. I'm the Vice Chair of the Shrewsbury School Committee. Our Chairperson, Lindsay Heffernan, is unable to be here tonight. It is her 20th wedding anniversary, and for some reason, this was not the group she wished to mark the occasion with. I would like to begin by thanking the Shrewsbury Media Connection staff for recording and broadcasting our meetings. Tonight's meeting is being both live streamed and broadcast live on Selco channels 29 and 329. It will be rebroadcast until our next regularly scheduled meeting on October 12th. The first item on our agenda tonight is public participation, a fixed item at the top of each of our regular meeting agendas. Public participation provides members of the community the opportunity to address the committee. Those wishing to address the committee should contact the chairperson in advance of the meeting, and per school committee policy, will be recognized for up to 3 minutes to speak. Tonight, no one has requested to address the committee, but for those wishing to do so in the future, you may find our contact information on the Shrewsbury Public Schools website. The next item on our agenda is chairpersons and members' reports. Colleagues, anything to report? Ms. Boucher.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I had the pleasure of attending both curriculum nights at Oak Middle School and Shrewsbury High School in the past couple weeks, and they're both were extremely well done. Lots of great information. Just wanted to congratulate the administration, staff, faculty on really great presentations. Really fun to experience the day in the life of a high schooler, running around the building and going from class to class and really kind of recreating the daily experience that our students have and the navigating the hallways. So it was both experiences were great, and I just wanted to commend the staffs at both schools.
Thank you. Colleagues, anything further? Yes. With that, the next item on our agenda is Superintendent's report. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Palich. We've had it's hard to believe that a month has gone by, essentially, since the beginning of the school year. It's been a very strong first month. We continue to get a lot of positive feedback on how things are going. I also wanted to mention curriculum nights and not only thank our administration for setting it up and all the work that our staff does to make strong presentations, but also to the parents who attend. They're always our best attended evenings of the year. There's a lot of great energy, and we really do appreciate everyone coming out to learn more about their child's curriculum and the experiences they have at school. At curriculum nights, excuse me, each family has been receiving a flyer. There's also been some emails that have gone out for an opportunity to provide us with some feedback about how things are going with the first part of the school year for their children, and also any questions or concerns they have about the upcoming school year through an online program that we use called Thought Exchange. That is open until October 4th. Families who are watching can refer to the emails that I've sent out, and we'll resend that link again in the near future. And that, again, it's going to be open until October 4th. We'd love to have people's feedback through that tool. I also want to mention that we had our first meeting this past Monday evening of the Sleep Health Advisory Committee. That's a committee that's been formed to advise me on the issue of how we might improve sleep health for children and adolescents. And part of that is considering something that is part of our strategic priorities and goals that we set back in 2018, which was to explore the idea of whether or not any adjustments to school start times might be an approach that we'd like to take as a school district. We have, it's a committee of about 31 people that includes a good number of parents, staff members, and Ms. Heffernan and Ms. Boucher are the liaisons from the school committee. I thought it was a really good first meeting, some good conversation and discussion of some articles on the topic, some logistics Mr. Collins presented around how school schedules and transportation works. And we're going to be developing a number of working groups that will be doing work on a variety of elements related to that. And we'll be presenting information to the school committee later in the fall, starting in November, with the work scheduled to wrap up with some presentation to the school committee. We're targeting mid-December for that in terms of some potential options that could come forward for the following school year. But again, it looks like it's going to be a terrific group to work with, and I was really pleased with our first meeting. And then finally, I just wanted to thank and commend the Shrewsbury High School girls soccer team. I had the opportunity yesterday to attend their game, which was their suicide prevention awareness game. It's obviously an incredibly important topic, something that we'll be talking about, of course, throughout the school year with the school committee in a variety of ways. But it was heartening to see the girls soccer team again, raising awareness of the issue, and I know they were collecting some funds as well to donate to that cause, and I wanted to commend them for that. And that is Superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. The next item on our agenda is a time-scheduled appointment. It is the Shrewsbury High School Advisory Program update. By way of background, since the pandemic, the district has amplified its focus on students' social and emotional well-being with an emphasis on creating school cultures where students feel a strong sense of connection and belonging. Dr. Lizotte will be coordinating brief updates to the committee tonight regarding various practices that are advancing this work. We are joined by Dr. Lizotte and Mr. Bazidlo, and we'll have you start by introducing members of your team you have with you tonight.
Thank you. I am Jane Lizotte, Assistant Superintendent for Community Partnerships and Wellbeing.
Todd Bazidlo, Shrewsbury High School Principal.
Deborah Herbert, the TV and film production teacher.
Pat Collins, science teacher at the high school.
John Brocky, science teacher at the high school.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you to this team of Shrewsbury educators who have joined us tonight. I'm grateful for their commitment and that of their SHS colleagues to the advancement of advisory programming at SHS. Advisory closely aligns with the Portrait of a Shrewsbury Graduate and the specific skills, knowledge, and dispositions that we work with our students to attain and develop while in our schools pre-K through 12. Many of the focus areas articulated in the Portrait of a Shrewsbury Graduate are further developed during the advisory experience at Shrewsbury High School. Here are just a few of the areas highlighted in the Portrait of a Shrewsbury Graduate. Global citizenship and engagement. Advisory specifically promotes listening with an open mind to understand others' situations and treating all with kindness and respect, and learning from and engaging collaboratively and reflectively with individuals representing diverse cultures, religions, and lifestyles in a spirit of mutual respect and open dialogue. In the focus area of collaboration and communication, advisory promotes demonstrating the ability to work effectively and respectfully with diverse teams, while valuing the individual commitment made by each team member. Listening effectively to decipher meaning of knowledge, values, attitudes, and intentions. Articulating thoughts and ideas effectively through communication skills, both verbal and nonverbal. And in the area of resilience and focus, advisory promotes employing strategies to maintain personal wellness, focus, and intention in students' lives. And finally, another aspect of Portrait of the Shrewsbury Graduate that aligns well with advisory is using interpersonal and problem-solving skills to influence and guide others toward a goal, while demonstrating integrity, humility, and flexibility of response. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bazidlo and team to talk more about the programming that's ongoing at Shrewsbury High School.
Great, I'm happy to be here tonight presenting with three fantastic teachers who you've probably either heard about through students who've presented at school committee, or you've seen in the classroom, or you've seen some work with with the students they're working with in various classroom settings or science fair projects or the TV studio. So I'm going to turn it over to them. They're kind of the spearhead behind this. We've launched advisory a number of years ago, and they'll talk a little bit about the beginnings. But we met over the summer to kind of refine and adjust and almost reboot advisory to kind of adjust to the coming back from the pandemic. So I'll turn it over to them and weigh in when I need to.
Awesome. So along with what Jane said, which is a big purpose of creating an advisory program and improving our advisory program, is what Dr. Darnisa Monty-Jackson has talked to us about for a couple years now, in the times we've brought her in, is belonging, giving our students a sense of belonging, along with the skills and character traits that we want them to learn or gain. I think one of our main goals is to make sure students feel a sense of belonging in our schools and in our classroom.
We ask our students all the time to learn with us, and one of their biggest questions we always want when they're in our class is for them to answer the why. So we thought it was very important to make sure that the why of why advisory is important to us as teachers, and more important, we want the students to say, yeah, I want advisory too. They understand the why. And as we all know, especially through the pandemic, a lot of our kids are suffering. Anxiety can be through the roof. Some of our kids are struggling with depression, not feeling like they belong. We see it every day, sometimes in our hallways. So for us, being able to feel close to people at school and felt that their teachers cared about them, that quote there at the end is really the heart of advisory, and it's really what we're hoping to develop and make advisory in our school.
So for advisory, for me, I'm the longest tenured person, I think, on this panel. It starts back in 2004 with the Breaking Ranks 2 report, where they reference within Breaking Ranks 2 the need for students to be connected to one trusted adult connected to one trusted adult in the building to have better outcomes, academic outcomes, social emotional outcomes. And the work started there at the high school probably in 04, 05. I arrived in 05, 06. There was a committee at the time that developed an advisory curriculum. We had some implementation issues. We had a change in leadership. And we really didn't do a good job of even implementing. We tried it and it didn't really go very far. And then the years kind of churned on. The New England Associations of Schools and Colleges, which is our accreditation arm for New England generally, came up with reports during our last decennial report citing us for not having advisory, and we need to try and implement advisory. That's one of the standards through the NEASC. And it was, again, a recommendation for the last 2 or 3 reports. So it gave us the opportunity to share the importance of it with staff, share the importance of it with students in the community, and really frame the why and why it's important. So that was part of it. And really the current research around this, particularly in the current atmosphere or environment around student connectivity with a trusted adult in the building. We want those students to develop really strong connections with people. And when things don't go well in their world, and some kids can't turn to their parents or a family member or a neighbor, that we can at least provide them the support they need. And we have to throw them, to a certain extent, a lifeline.
So the recent history with the advisory program started 3 years ago when or 4 years ago when we started researching Character Strong, and a few years ago when several staff members went to full-day trainings. We also had a PD day, a training where they came in and spoke to us at one of our half-day PD days. 3 years ago, we had 4 advisory periods. Unfortunately, the shutdown happened in the spring of that year. There was a kindness challenge that was attempted as well during that March to May or June shutdown. 2 years ago, it became a more regular program still on Zoom during our fully remote Wednesdays. And then last year, we met 13 times in person for 45-minute lessons, still under the Character Strong umbrella.
So over the summer, a team of educators volunteered to get together to kind of revamp this, given some feedback from students and teachers. So like Voltron, the best of the best united into the super being. This is a list of the names of the teachers that got together, including the 3 members you see on this panel today.
Some of the themes, that's kind of how we started. We wanted to really discuss what people were feeling about our advisory so far in the Character Strong program. We definitely got a lot of, it was sort of from teachers that seemed a little scripted and too restrictive and not authentic. And I think for a teacher, when you're not feeling like your authentic self teaching something, it's really hard to have some passion while teaching it. Also the length, sort of, our advisory was a lot longer, and sometimes it just seemed too long. And there wasn't sort of what we think, we were just discussing how Shrewsbury has this unified message, and it's something that we want our kids to feel and be able to relate to, and there wasn't really this unified message. It was a lot of great lessons that we found important for our kids to hear about, but there wasn't sort of this consistency of what we think's really important for our kids. And just some of the things the teachers were saying is just also for them, it feels like one more thing on our plate. And like, we already do this in class. One of our jobs is to connect to our kids. So how can advisory take that another level too?
This is something Dr. Sawyer presented on the first day of school for staff. A quote by James Clear You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So when teachers say, we all do this in class, I think we can all believe them, but at the same time, if it's for 96% of students or 95% of students, it's like, let's have a system that does this for 100% of our students. And I think that was important to us, an important reason to have this work and have buy-in as well. You know, a lot of the feedback was negative, so some of the changes we made because of that feedback, there's a lot of teacher choice now. There is still Character Strong as an option every time an advisory lesson comes along. I was a strong proponent of Character Strong, but I too agreed that they were long PowerPoints that weren't necessarily authentic, and some teachers did like them though, so that is still an option every advisory, along with lessons that we made and other teachers can volunteer as well. We reduced the length of the advisory period to try to maintain engagement. We scheduled advisory more frequently and more consistently to prioritize it. If every time we ran it, it was getting booted by something else, then we're sending the message that we don't prioritize it. And then we wanted to provide emphasis on connections, character development, life skills, along with all of the core values of Shrewsbury High School. So again, some of the things that we may say we do in classrooms, but let's have a program a system that officially does it.
So given all the feedback, given our ideas moving forward, the group got together over the summer and we developed this mission statement that you see before you. And then this mission statement helped us develop our lessons. We met frequently over the summer in order to develop those lessons with this mission statement in mind. So the teachers got together. It was actually beautiful as we got together over the summer. We worked very efficiently together. We'd sit down, talk about the goals for that particular meeting.
By the way, this was by Zoom, so some of us would be on vacation at like the beach.
On the beach, yeah.
We were
A campground, it's still me.
And so we just break out the tasks and rely on each other professionally to come up with the things that we said we would come up with. We developed lessons. And we developed a Google Sheet that helped teachers now access all of these lessons, which gave teachers the choice for those weeks. And we had built out the first 4 weeks of advisories. And that also included that staff feedback so that we've got future lessons that we can build. So next we're going to see, this is just a screenshot of the spreadsheet that all teachers have access to. And you can see for each week that there are lesson options as well as a Character Strong option. And so teachers can click on the links that are embedded in there. That pulls them right up to the lesson plan, which walks them through all the links or videos or whatever they need to do for that particular lesson. And that really addressed a few of the concerns that teachers had. They were able now to make choices about which lesson that they were going with. It also allowed them to quickly adapt to that lesson plan instead of feeling like they were stuck in that Character Strong. So it was really more adaptable and gave them the choices that they wanted. And so we're also taking into some future considerations. We're looking both for advice from teachers and their expertise as we build future lessons, including asking from students the what I need question. What do they want out of advisory? And how can they best, connect with adults, meeting that goal that we had set out from the beginning. So still looking to build those lessons.
And hear from us, but we thought it would be really important to hear from students. So yesterday I interviewed various students from various grades. It was also Adam Sandler Day yesterday because it's Spirit Week, so you might see some Adam Sandler doppelgangers in it.
I think it's really important to feel connected at school because you get to develop the sense of community, and so if you're ever just walking around in the hallway or if you are in a club, you know a lot of people there, and it builds school spirit.
Because everybody should feel like they belong at school and feel like comfortable at school and feel comfortable going to school and not have to worry about anything like that?
Because it's our community and we should be connected to them.
And we're going to, like, we go here every single day of the week, so, like, we want to feel, like, not connected, but, like, you want to feel like you're a part of the community and, like, not somewhere that, like, you shouldn't be.
I feel that it's important to get connected because, like, you make a lot of connections, which, like, evolves into friendships, which helps you progress as a person. And friends in general can just help you in becoming a better person. And whenever you have hardships, they're always there to help you, no matter like what kind of situation.
So advisory is a very good thing to connect with other people because we get the opportunity to talk to different people in our class, and every single advisory class is different.
For me, my class isn't very, like, there isn't like a lot of chemistry. Like, we don't really fit together well, so it's just kind of awkward.
In my advisory, we actually, for some reason, we all get like we all get along really well, and even like we sometimes like go off of advisory a little bit, but it's still like we're like collaborating and like still like talk, like we're taking like the stuff from advisory, but like also like going off topic with it and still like trying to get to know like our classmates.
I kind of like it because it's like a time of the day where it's like not stressful, you don't have to do work, and like if you have like a question or something, like my teacher is the math teacher and I'm really confused in math, so I just like go in there and I'm like, math was hard today, and he's like, well, it's gonna be okay. Like,
well, you get to hear from people from all different walks of life, so and during advisory, like, you get to hear like somebody who's had different experiences than me, and I get to hear those and empathize with them and sympathize with them, and it just helps, you know, build that mindset that like everybody's different and that everybody should be included.
So thanks to our TV studio students who put that together, and thanks to the students in advisory who volunteered to speak. But we'll certainly take any questions the committee has around advisory and certainly talk a little bit more about it. So questions?
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, questions or comments? Mrs. Fritz.
First, thank you for taking time out of your summer to do that. I think that's commendable right then and there. And the thing I like about it is this belonging connection. We all have to have that in our human beings and to be part of whatever we're working in. But I also like the fact when we're talking about soft skills, that the students are learning interpersonal skills and other ways to communicate. And employers look for soft skills now, sometimes more than, you might be great at what you do, but if you can't talk to someone in the office, that's going to be a problem. So I think we're building a lot of things out of this. And I know John and I did the SEA negotiations, and we did hear about it this year, that this is another thing on everybody's plate. And we definitely understand that, but I think it is a lot, but it's also a good thing for everybody to participate in, the teachers and the students. And it's just really good feedback that we need. One question I have, when we're looking at these first two lessons, and it might be too soon, do we have any feedback on this new revamped model, how that's going?
Yeah, nothing in writing. We haven't sent out that form yet. But the vibe is that it is overwhelmingly more positive than it was last year. And to both that point and the one more thing on our plates point, like I think the timing did have a lot to do with it. Not everything, but I think all of the adjustments we made this year all sort of work together. But it seems like from students and teachers that it is much more enjoyable and productive experience.
We definitely, like when we presented on our first PD day, the whole faculty was like, I think they kind of clapped and they were like, thank you, because they all were, there was definitely like they all felt at least excited about it. I mean, I think we also have to try it and see if it works. And it's, as we explained to them, it is a very like revolving kind of, what we're doing isn't finished. And we're very open to like changing things, and we really want to get all of our teachers and our staff to join us in the process, because they're the ones that have to teach it too.
Right.
And we're soliciting feedback from the teachers, so we're asking them if you have ideas for lessons, if you are good at this particular topic that we want, submit your lesson plans and help us build this thing. And I think we're moving forward and asking for that feedback from students too. So it'll continue to grow and improve.
Great, thank you. I think it's just such a collaborative, which is great because people are feeling heard, the students are feeling heard as well as staff, so thank you.
Mr. Wentz.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I love the video presentation as well because you really get to feel what the students are thinking about the program. I see a lot of value in the program. Certainly having a high school junior, having been through a few years of it. And you mentioned talking about the why, like why we're doing this. I think that's maybe where my daughter, maybe struggles, with why are we doing this? As part of the kind of the introduction to advisory this year, are you kind of like reinforcing kind of the why?
I would hope. I hope our teachers are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of something we asked.
Right.
I know that all of us that are on that this summer is because to us it's important.
Sure.
And so we want to make sure that everybody that is involved in the program, and especially our students, it doesn't matter how many times we sit up there and be like, it's advisory day. If they're not coming in and excited to be in your room and being like, oh, great, it's never going to pick up. And I think for us, it started while we were hybrid and we were, I was meeting my advisory the whole time when they were freshmen through Zoom.
Right.
And it's a very hard relationship to, none of them knew each other.
Right.
So that was an easy thing to necessarily have it be organic. And then, we got to meet sophomore year, but it was almost like meeting for the first time.
Sure.
So now I have juniors, and the vibe in my room and them knowing each other is much different. So it sometimes also takes a little bit from when they're freshmen. And the great part is that you have the same advisory through all 4 years of their high school career, and they're with the same teacher.
Yeah.
So that relationship when they're freshmen till senior is very different, and that's kind of what we're hoping. So I think when kids really understand that this is a person that for 4 years of your high school career will be part of your high school, and you don't just have them for English sophomore year, that they'll be here for you, will be a kind of a why that I think students will hopefully really learn that this is what we want them to experience with it.
Yeah, I appreciate the constructive feedback that you shared, about kind of how it's gone so far from staff and students, and I also think I agree with Ms. Fritz. The interpersonal skills are, becoming a lost art. I mean, even prior to the pandemic, with the phones and all that, I think it's important to take them out of their comfort zone and maybe, engage with people that maybe they otherwise wouldn't. So yeah, no, thank you for the presentation. It's great.
Ms. Boucher.
I would also like to thank you for giving your time, especially over the summer, to do this important work. And I just had a question about, and I guess again it's probably very early, but the switch to the smaller block of time more frequently, how's that been, and what's the feedback surrounding that?
It seems to be, again, overwhelmingly positive. I think it's a combination of everything. I can't isolate, why, if it's specifically for shorter, but one of our goals for making it shorter was we want teachers to say we need more time in advisory, and we're happy to make it, well, I'm not in charge of that. Todd's happy to make the schedule so it's longer. We want that feedback. We want to get to a point where, yes, we shortened it to make sure this productive time and that our time is, that the students want to be there, and if it drones on, then that doesn't necessarily happen. But if it's engaging, then people start asking for more time, and that's what we want. That's our goal in the long run. So far, the feedback has been, like I said, overwhelmingly positive from a few students that I've talked to in my advisory, and then the staff that I've talked to as well.
I think the other lovely Mr. Collins had said, start with 25 minutes, and hopefully people will wish for 5 more minutes because it's going so well. So,
thank you.
Colleagues, anything further? Just a comment from me, and I want to lift up what Mrs. Fritz said about soft skills. I appreciate the effort to make it sacrosanct. I think it's with the volume of what you have to do with our students, I think it's really easy to communicate inadvertently to students that something is not important. And I think that keeping it sacrosanct is probably going to go a long way in making sure that they understand that this is something that the district is very much committed to. So thank you for that. Dr. Sawyer.
No, thank you. And I appreciate the James Clear quote. Excuse me, being put in the slide presentation, and it reminds me of the idea that, doing things more frequently for shorter amounts of time often help build habits better than trying to do a lot of things for a longer period of time, but not doing them very frequently. And I think that the frequency, I'm curious to know how that goes over the course of the year, but that seems to be a good approach. I also want to thank Ms. Herbert, Mr. Collins, Mr. Brocky, and their colleagues who were on the committee who worked on this. Our motto that's on our logo is empowering learners, and I've said this often that we don't say students, we say learners, because everyone in the school district, including our educators, we want to be learners. And I think that you collectively are empowering your colleagues. And I think going from something that sometimes when you start something new, going with something that might be a little bit more formulaic or stock, even if it's a really good program, makes sense. But the fact that we have such a talented faculty in Shrewsbury, including at Shrewsbury High School, of course, and them wanting to use their talents to get across the same information or the points or the lessons in ways that they can really help engage kids that may be different than what is on a pre-done slide deck. That's encouraging to me. And that's something that I think I know people are going to do great work, and I really appreciate that you're asking people to share back out because that's sort of crowdsourcing of good practice. It makes it easier for everyone, and it gives people lots of options, and I think it engages people and it makes them feel as if they're being treated as professionals, and that's certainly how we want our faculty to feel. So I appreciate that. I want to thank Dr. Lizotte, especially for pointing out kind of the big picture piece, how this connected to our vision around a portrait of a graduate and those. I don't love the term soft, but I know that's the term people use around skills because I think they're really incredibly important. You don't want to make it seem they're diminished, but those kinds of relationship building skills are really critical. And that's something, this is a way that we're putting that into action. And then thanking Mr. Bazidlo for, in his role, making sure that this is happening. This is an example of something that frankly isn't we're not pioneering this as a school district. This has been a practice that's been around for a long time in a lot of places, and for one reason or another, really just hadn't taken root at Shrewsbury High School, but it needs to. And when we have a practice that's pretty strongly proven to be effective for kids, it behooves us to make sure that we get that into play and make sure that our kids benefit from it. And of course, we're still in this early stage of making sure we're figuring out the best way for that to work for our students and our faculty. So appreciate it moving forward. Look forward to hearing more as it goes, and appreciate all the extra work that went into creating something to make it work better for kids and for teachers. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is another time-scheduled appointment, summer educational programming, and this is a report. This summer, the district provided various summer academic support programs for students in addition to the mandated special education summer programming. Enclosed in our meeting materials, colleagues, we had two reports, one from Ms. Clowder, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, which provides details regarding what types of general education programming was offered, participation rates, and associated costs. We also had a report from Ms. Belcito, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, providing information for the extended school year program, which provides programming for students with disabilities who qualify for summer support. Ms. Belcito and Ms. Clowder are here with us this evening, and they will present those reports. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Tonight I'll first start to talk about the extended school year services that are for students that are eligible. They're students with disabilities that qualify for services through student services. Amy will talk about the general education programs, but this is a helpful reminder that we match supports to meet student needs. So our team that included directors and our extended school year coordinators consistently met to design, organize, and coordinate all the services for students who are eligible. Many thanks to all the work this team has done to make sure the program continues to thrive for our students and our families. I'd like to especially thank Meg Bartlett, who's the Assistant Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel, Kristen Herrick, who's the Director of Specialized Programs, Pre-K through 12, Jackie Marcello, who's the Director of Elementary Special Education and the Extended School Year Coordinator for our middle school and high school, and Janet Murphy, who's an Educational Learning Coordinator at Coolidge School and also our Extended School Year Coordinator for Pre-K through Elementary. So the criteria for our programming is identified when a special education student has demonstrated or likely to demonstrate substantial regression in his or her learning skills, or substantial regression or difficulty in relearning such skills if an extended program is not provided. Meaning if there was a lapse in time in school due to vacations, such as the summer months, programming like this is helpful to maintain skills for certain students. Decisions regarding the extended school year programs must be made on an individual basis and taking into consideration the unique needs of every child. So services are based on specific information reflected in each student's service delivery page located in the Individualized Education Plans, or IEPs. Staff working with students with IEPs collected progress data on student-specific IEP goals throughout the year. Minimally, after each school vacation, this information is gathered. The data was then used with school-based teams to determine who would be eligible for the summer services. Our district offers extended school year services for eligible students pre-K through 12. Programs are broken down at the pre-K, elementary, middle, and high school levels. And we have services that have preschool academic classrooms for student-specific progress and core preschool content for social play, academic, and self-management. We have academic classrooms across all grade levels designed to maintain student-specific progress in core academic goal areas, reading, written language, and mathematics. The curriculum is designed to target student-specific skills in each of the designated goal areas. Academic classrooms function in small student-teacher ratios with at least one classroom assistant to support students enrolled in the program. Our Educational Learning Center, or ELC, those classrooms are designed to meet student-specific goals across all IEP goal areas. Students must be currently enrolled in intensive special needs programming, such as our Educational Learning Centers, or students who require such similar services. And students within this program continue to work on individual goal areas for maintenance of skills. The program is overseen by a special educator, but it does have a very high student-to-staff ratio. We have related services, which when we refer to that, we're referring to speech and language, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, with specific progress towards related service goals. And also we have structured reading students who work specifically in that particular area. This is targeted in one-to-one or small group formats. We also offer walk-in services for students during the summer. Students can come in for services for occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language, or structured reading. And students come in to the summer program for these services in either small group or one-to-one format as well. All of our programs this year were housed at Beale School for the first time, which is climate controlled, and certainly a beautiful building for these services to take place. Locating the program in one place results in certain efficiencies in terms of location, nursing, and program oversight. As indicated in the chart, the district reviewed staffing patterns, transportation, and contracted services from the past 2 fiscal years. In 2021, we experienced a large increase in contracted services for related services, so that was our speech and language, occupational therapy, and orientation and mobility service. And this was significantly reduced this year, although we still needed to use a significant level of contracted services. Costs providing transportation were covered through our federal special education grant the previous 2 years, but was expensed to our operating budget this year. This year, we had 277 students enrolled in our programming. 179 of the students were in pre-K through grade 4. 98 students were in grades 5 through 12. We had 136 staff. So we had our coordinators, our educational learning center coordinators. We had our board certified behavior analysts. We had teachers that were both full day and half day. We had half-time occupational therapists, and we also had to contract for some occupational therapy and speech, as mentioned, physical therapy, speech and language, structured reading, our applied behavior analysis technicians, or ABA techs, and our child-specific aides, or CSAs. Our special education program supports a number of students' educational profiles. This is why we offer such a wide variety of services during the summer months. This chart highlights a breakdown of how many students accessed our summer program by category of program type. As you can see, our Educational Learning Center has the largest population of students enrolled with 23.8%, followed by our academic classrooms with 22.7%. So in thinking about this past summer, we know that all of our teachers were able to give student summaries related to current levels of performance in academic, behavioral, language, and social skills to other educators to learn about the children coming into this school year. Our Educational Learning Center programs continue to be able to collaborate to help transition students from one grade level to another or one building to another, Parker Road to preschool, Parker Road preschool to the elementary to Sherwood, and so on. Our summer coordinators will meet with staff as necessary as the fall continues to review performance and attendance and input regarding the summer session in which they worked. Myself, along with the assistant director and the other directors, will continue to meet this year to proactively plan for the summer of 2023. Believe it or not, this begins in the month of October. This will include analyzing staffing needs, programming, and transportation. Some of our high school and middle school students also accessed other vocational opportunities, which was wonderful this year, including light maintenance and courier services. They also were able to access the community utilizing the Shrewsbury Credit Union van. One special addition this summer, which would be the next slide, some of our high school students who work with our program at the high school began talking about the daily grind, which is actually an opportunity that was made possible through a grant last year given to the students to offer coffee and snacks for purchase at the high school. And the students took the initiative to actually ask if they could do that version during the summer programming. And that which then lead to an end of year summer celebration with a back to school raffle with their proceeds, and also a business plan that has been sent along to Mr. Collins, with the hopes of expanding this type of opportunity to other buildings during the current school year. So we're working on that. It's on our radar. We certainly know these 3 students will be willing and ready to support the business plan. Was wonderful to see that they took that kind of initiative. And at this point, I believe I will turn it over to Amy.
Thanks. So most students don't think of summer and learning in the same breath, but we know that for some children, the break from routine really disrupts their progress. So in an effort to help children maintain the levels of achievement that they had earned in June, and to ensure that all students have continued access to learning resources, we organized some general ed supports for everybody. So you can see at the bottom tier, all of our students have access to online practice platforms for reading and math, but also summer reading programs. And we know that summer reading correlates to later academic success, and that's really important. I think sometimes we take for granted the power of that tier 1 level of support. I'm going to focus on tier 2, which is the Summer Academy program, which was, we were able to use our ESSER dollars to continue to provide a second tier of support for general education. And so in addition to online tools and activity calendars, selected students in K-8 were able to attend the Summer Academy in-person program also at Beale. And we also offered credit recovery at the high school level. So we structured support to target reading or math skills or the academic courses for high school students that would be most impactful to their progress to the next grade. We also really were mindful about limiting class size to be small numbers so that we could continue to enact the instructional supports that we know work really well during the school year. So individualized support, small group support, targeted to specific academic skills. And across all levels, the idea is to really match individual needs to what the target skills would be. This looks different at the high school by design because they're focusing on credit recovery, but the overall plan is that fostering connections is easier when numbers are small, and that it's especially important to foster those connections with students that are reluctant learners. So the Summer Academy kind of mirrored the structure and the practices we know to be effective during the academic year, and smaller groups kind of facilitated connection and trust. Low numbers made it easier to match kids to materials. And this summer, we were able to leverage literacy tutors and our math tutor to supplement classroom instruction, which was not possible last year because we had some of our tutors leading classroom instruction. So these are just our big why, is to really make sure that we connect students, support them in the skill areas that they need, but also make sure that some of those tier 1 supports that they might not be mindful of is something that's top of mind when they leave the program and go back, because we know that there's a stretch of summer remaining before school starts up again, and we want to make sure that they're following up with using those software tools and summer reading resources. I put this up here because our coordinators are a little different this year, but also because I think it reminds me, when I listened to Meg talk about her program and I described mine, of how many people it takes to organize something this big. Opening up a summer program at Beale was a little bit like opening up a new school, because we have students coming from all different schools that need to be oriented, and similarly a different group of staff. So in order to make that work and to form a community quickly, you need a really energetic bunch of people, and we've been really fortunate both years to have that in our coordinators. I also want to acknowledge Christina Manos, who coordinates the program for English learners. And there are programs for specific newcomers within the program and students that don't travel outside of those classrooms. And then there are students that are fully integrated in the Summer Academy model, and she matches, kind of based on oral language proficiency, what would be the best program for those students. And I included Karen Isaacson this year because we structured the program so that we could have enrichment in the afternoons, and Karen was a really big part of organizing that and facilitating kind of student support for students that needed some adult support both in the morning and then in the afternoon program. So I really want to acknowledge all of their hard work. And similarly, Angie Flynn and Todd coordinated the high school program, which was really focused on helping students to complete online self-paced courses and to get in-person support at the high school in the content areas with 4 on-site staff there. So in terms of eligibility, we looked at students in terms of how they were scoring academically during the year, both on the STAR assessment for K-8 and also in terms of district-based assessments. So you may have experienced as parents kind of hearing about the DRA or the reading level. That helped us think about what students really were making progress in their fluency and which students needed more support. And similarly, we looked at math assessment data to help us think about that. But we found in last year, and that continued to be a trend this year, that most students who needed reading support benefited from math support. And so the program is really geared around those 2 content areas. At the high school program, students who are at risk of failing 1 or more courses were eligible for the credit recovery program. And I think this is a helpful table just to kind of see the changing in the structure. This is our 2nd year. So you could see from our presentation last year that what we planned for and what happened kind of shifted, because you invite eligible students and then it's a voluntary program, so not everybody accepts the invitation. This year we had smaller number of students, even though our footprint or our available spaces was the same, by about 100 kids. But our classes were able to meet the needs of the kids that enrolled really easily. One of the things that was really helpful is that we had more professional staff who were available to teach, and that freed paraprofessionals and tutors to play their roles better, and especially to give that second dose of instruction for kids that really needed more reading support. At the middle level, we had 1 team of 2 teachers at each grade level. Again, in both models, class sizes were small. So when you hear that average class size was 23, that's with 2 adults. So there's lots of opportunity for individualized support. And in terms of the numbers, we served 275 students. That's fewer than the 381 we had last year. We have then fewer staff, because we don't need as many staff if we have fewer sections. But we were really fortunate that because we were both programs were at Beale, we had a shared nurse on staff. We had actually, I think, 4 different nurses, including Noelle Friedman, who was the director, who was terrific. But we were also able to have a designated secretary to support both programs. And you know, when you've got a campus as big as Beale and families coming and going, how helpful that is. So the change in staffing was really helpful. We also had 70 high school volunteers. We had 50 last year, so we really grew. And maybe that was a little bit too big of a growth point for us. But the high school volunteers really fostered connections with younger students and kind of modeled, when we talk about social emotional learning, the behaviors we expect to see in terms of kindness. So when you're forming a community made up of disparate schools, it's really helpful to have older models that kind of mimic those qualities. In terms of the numbers, in terms of budget, we invested a lot of money in reading and math intervention materials that helped launch the program last year, but most importantly, were put into use in all of our schools in the subsequent academic year. We didn't have to buy those materials again. We did invest in staff t-shirts and supplies that were just kind of basic to make the program run with high school volunteers, summer academy staff, and extended school year staff. It was helpful to have different color t-shirts and differentiate us so we were going different places. But we did see a slight increase in staffing because we matched paraprofessionals with each classroom this year, and we had a better rate of pay for professional educators. So in terms of my reflections, we know how important summer practice is to offset regression. We know that we have data that can help us target students that need Tier 1 and a little bit more. And at the same time, it's a voluntary program. So we have more students accept our invitation this year proportionally than last year. But we still only had 54% of our students kind of accept our invitation from the pool that was eligible. And so when we think about the why of that, it's interesting. We did ask all parents who were invited to respond. And when you look at the response, it asks, if you say no, why are you saying no? But very few of the people who declined our invitation clicked on that to say why they weren't. So we have a very small sample size of the no's to tell us why. But transportation did come up. Family plans did come up, whether people were hosting or taking a vacation. And I think the other piece is there was pent-up demand for travel. And so this summer in particular, I think people were really looking, especially if they had family overseas, to be able to reconnect. And so I know anecdotally, especially for families who have family abroad, that was a real driver. In terms of the feedback for students who did participate, we anticipate having kind of a full data set on whether students who participated consistently regressed or held on to their June academic achievement rates. We don't have that quite yet, but I'm looking forward to looking at that data. What we do know is that, as you can see from these photographs, students really benefited from connecting with each other. The high school volunteers really had a lasting impact on some of the students' enjoyment of the program, and helped to free teachers to support kids really individually. And you can see students who really gained from being able to practice some of those basic skills. We see our youngest learner on the right-hand side there. When we talk about students in older grades, we've got to figure out how better to engage them, though. Our attendance dropped off as kids went into grade 4. And so we had kind of 2 challenges to solve. One, we wanted everybody who targeted support to take advantage of it, because we know some families can say no thank you, and they have a private tutor, a private option, but not all families do. And then the secondary problem was they would say yes and come, but then not attend consistently. So when we looked at the attendance rates that you know from your report, we see a drop-off in interest for older students, and we have to figure out how to engage them more effectively. So that's key work to do. In terms of surveying families, we sent out surveys twice. We got 16 responses. So of the 16, they were very positive, but that's pretty typical for a survey. You hear from the people who are happiest or most unhappy. it was really gratifying to see of the responses we got that 88% said their kids were highly engaged and, you know, were satisfied with the program. Additional comments, I think, are more telling from kids. You can see some of the comments that parents made that really struck in my mind were, I loved the interaction with other students who are older. My kid had a lot of fun with learning. My son's not really able to tell me how it went, but I can tell that he felt safe and enjoyed himself, which is really important. The increased level of assistance really helped my son get some work done with focus. And I really enjoyed attending and really enjoyed attending and looked forward to going. So I think if we can have kids connect summer with learning in a way that feels positive like that, to me, that's really affirming. I think the flip side of that coin is we do invest a lot of time and energy in running the program, and the opportunity cost of running it over the summer versus working on how we can leverage resources to support kids when we have a captive audience and transportation built in during the summer year is that tricky balance. But overall, I'm really grateful to all of the staff, not just our coordinators, but the teachers in the program who really invested lots of time and energy to make it both really impactful and fun for kids. And we're fortunate to have such high caliber educators in our system.
Thank you. Appreciate the report. Colleagues, questions or comments? Mrs. Fritz.
Thank you for the report. And I think, you know, the highlight is we do spend a lot of time and energy, staff resources and financial resources for this really valuable program to help students who need that extra educational services so they don't regress and get, you know, on track for when school starts. So I think, you know, we're talking about engaging students. I mean, in my head, I was thinking, you know, like we really need to engage families so that the parents understand the why we want these students to come and get this extra help that the district is just really working really hard to do. So I think when I was reading through our report, which is much more detailed, that was my concern with the low amount of you know, the percentage that are going. And I do understand families have summer plans and there's a lot of other issues. So what can we do to help families understand the importance of it, and what can we do to get the students to the schools, I think is the next step.
Yeah, you know, we really thought about that. So I'd love to have some anecdotal feedback from parents, because one of the things parents will say is, you know, I really like your newsletter and I like listening, but I don't always tune into school committee. And I really pay most attention to the classroom teacher. So when we organized the invitation process, we had a script for teachers. We had them be the point of contact to make the first communication. We followed up with district communication because we know parents are most tuned into whether their teacher blesses or recommends something. We looked at how we could engage literacy tutors who had relationships with students to make that secondary or third reach out. And, you know, we had probably 5% more people saying yes than last year, but that still leaves a considerable number of students out. So
right.
I wonder, you know, how much of our communication can be improved with better communication tools, you know, video or translated materials or things like that. We certainly worked to provide
worked
those.
Hard, right, right,
those
worked very
things.
hard.
But we need to hear more from a select pool, kind of informally, like what could we have done? Because I think part of it is really people were looking forward to their summer, and it wasn't that they didn't think it was important, but they had prioritized, you know,
The
or
way
had
balance,
conflicts. Yeah.
What is the timing of the identification of the students? I know you want to have as much data as possible to identify.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, you know, the timing of it may also tie into those plans for the summer. If families knew, I don't know when, March, April, like, whatever.
That's a really good point too. Like, when are families making plans for summer? When's the date by which we can avoid conflict and still allow for enough growth for students that we can target the right groups? Yeah, it is definitely a tricky mix.
Right.
We looked at the end of year data, which is submitted in May.
Okay, so it is later in the year. But again, you want to have as complete data as you can for who is eligible.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Maybe we should look at, is there that much change between the mid-cycle data and the end that would warrant kind of thinking about it sooner?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mr. Wensky.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I was curious if you give me more context on the walk-in services piece, right? Is it just available to those that are eligible within that pool of 400, or is that anybody?
That's just in special education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, students that could be speech only or occupational therapy only, they wouldn't come for an academic classroom, they just come for the service that they qualified for, which might be 30 minutes a week in order to help maintain skills or prevent regression. But that's just for eligible students in those particular areas.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question about the vocational opportunities. You mentioned like light maintenance and courier services. Is that within like the
Within
town?
the
or-
school. Yes, and within the community, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Colleagues, anything further? Dr. Sawyer.
I just want to thank, excuse me, Ms. Bosita and Ms. Clouder for the presentation. Obviously, you can tell from the information the enormous amount of work that goes into this programming. I think for those watching, I mean, we run school year round. I mean, there's only a couple of weeks in August when we don't have academic programming running. And that's both because of requirements, and certainly in our special education program, that's a requirement. And then certainly by what is good practice. But I think that you can tell that we're thinking about, the teams working on this are thinking about how to make it better all the time and make it as efficacious as possible. And we'll continue to see how this evolves. And we want to be cost effective, and we also want to make sure that we're providing good opportunities. And I think that over time, there's been a lot of opportunities that families have been really pleased with in Shrewsbury, especially around the enrichment programming, which we were able to bring back to a degree this past summer, and thinking about how to integrate that effectively with some of these more intensive academic pieces will continue to be important. The other benefit, frankly, for families, and that's where maybe the timing may come into play a little bit, is the opportunity to have either no cost or in the case of enrichment, very low cost opportunities for for families who need their kids to be doing something in the summer while they work.
Right.
And that's something that is a secondary benefit for families as well. So we'll continue to work to improve it everywhere we can, but the leaders who put it together and coordinated it, and the educators and support staff, paraprofessionals who worked there, overall did a terrific job. Really appreciate their efforts. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda tonight is another time scheduled appointment. It is a report on personnel for FY23. Ms. Malone, our Executive Director of Human Resources, will present a report describing our personnel process and new hires in the district for the 2022-2023 school year. And of course, we have the full report enclosed in our meeting materials. And at this time, we will welcome Ms. Malone.
Hi.
Hello.
I know you probably heard a lot about staffing in the news countrywide. And I think that, I just want to put this to view the slides. Sorry. Where am I missing that? File,
I think you have to click on the slide deck to get
the slide deck, right?
to get back into, there you go.
There we go. Well, thank you. Little help from the team there. I think we have better news to share than what you typically have been hearing in the news about a lot of other districts. But what I want to start with was really what our goals were within the HR department around personnel hiring. So we knew there was going to be a labor shortage, so we wanted to fully staff our professional roles with the strongest candidates that we could. And we did have actually 98% of the positions filled by the start of school. So we had a very good, fill rate, if you would, on that. We also wanted to fully staff paraprofessional roles, and that we were less successful with, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, as I've spoken with the school committee about before, we wanted to increase the diversity of our teams. So I do want to talk about what happened with paraprofessional hiring. because that's an important point. We're zooming in on the roles of the ABA technicians who work with students on the autism spectrum, and child-specific assistants who may work with students with a variety of needs. We are still, to date, looking for 15 more ABA technicians and 8 child-specific assistants. We have hired 22 in each role since July 1st. When the budgeted was made in the previous fall and winter time period, 111 ABA techs and 60 child-specific assistants were anticipated. That did include some growth to those, knowing that we'd probably have a certain amount of people coming in. But we have determined at this point in time that our actual need is 126 ABA techs and 69 child-specific assistants, which at this point is a total of 24 beyond budget. Since the budget was approved in May, we've had 21 move-ins, and some of the additions are due to that last bullet there, emergent needs of existing students in the district that required enhanced support. Which leads me to my next slide, and this is the advertising portion of this presentation. We need parents. We are also reaching out to colleges and doing aggressive recruiting in a number of places, working very closely, of course, with the special education leadership team, Meg Belcito, Kristen Herrick, and Meg Bartlett. So we need parents. That's the other thing. So if you are interested in being a day-to-day sub, please email Lindsay Stashowski, who is my HR manager. She assists me in the leadership of the HR function, and her email is up on the screen. ABA technicians, we have a dedicated mailbox now that's reviewed by all of us. ABA postings at shrewsbury.k12.ma.us, and child-specific assistance apply to CSA postings at shrewsbury.k12.ma.us. I feel like I want to say these again. Apply to ABA postings at Shrewsbury or CSA postings at Shrewsbury, or contact Lindsay Stashowski if you want to be a day-to-day sub. Many of our day-to-day subs are hired into ABA or child-specific roles, or they're hired into building subs or LTS positions. Some even ultimately become teachers with us. So it's a great entry into the field for people who want to give it a try. So the other topic was really the diversity. 23% of our hires for this year were diverse in the federal categories we've talked about before. Last year, I reported to you it was 17%, so we are seeing growth. And 13% were in professional roles, so teaching roles, specialists, and we'll begin to track that annually, so every year when I do this report, I'll report out on that. And I know back in the spring, I talked about sometimes people don't report at all, so that would be a question people would have. We actually were able to get every job finalist to report this year. That was something that went through the HR team only, so it was me, Lindsay, Katie Fox, or Donna Manzoli is actually helping us on a part-time basis, and we've been able to have everybody report. They don't have to, but everybody has. So that's been very helpful in knowing exactly where we're at. And then we are going to continue the teacher diversification project this year, and hopefully I'll be able to report out more about that at a future school committee meeting. So getting to the people that we did hire this year, we have 4 new district leaders, one of which was actually hired in the spring, which was Lindsay Stashowski, the Human Resources Manager, just in the nick of time from my perspective. Also, Ms. Hallie Burak is the new principal of Oak, and Dr. Scott Mulcahy is the new principal of the Walter J. Patton School. We've also added Ms. Jamie Millett as the Director of Counseling and Mental Health Services. As you know, that position was added this year, and we discovered pretty quickly when Meg pointed it out to us, Ms. Belcito, that there were actually 35 people district-wide in either counseling, psychology, or BCBA type roles in our social worker. So it's a very large group of people that need supervision. I like to report on percentages, applicants to our professional level positions this year. We had 1,301. 4.76% of those who applied were appointed. Applicants to our paraprofessional position, 381. 16.8% of those were appointed. And I think it bears noting that if you applied to be an ABA or a child-specific assistant, that percentage was higher. And for other roles, like say a media assistant or a tutor, it was much lower. So, but that's where it averaged out to, was 16.8%. So searches conducted and filled to date: district leadership 4, professional level 62, paras 64, IT 4, and administrative assistant 2. I'm going to note that like IT, that includes some people that we hired in late spring, but they weren't reported on last year, so I wanted to include them in this report. So altogether, that's 136 hires. Well, I guess that's all I had to say tonight, except as always, I like to thank the people who help us get this done. There are educators, there are parents and students who either led or served on, well, in this case, served on search committees. But I feel like our district leadership team just really did an excellent job this year. They took to heart some of the changes that Dr. Sawyer asked them to take. They worked very hard because of a lot of competing priorities last year. We were a little bit late getting out with some of our postings. That was on HR, and the degree to which district leaders jumped in and filled the positions was really impressive. So kudos to all of them. And then Lindsay's become just, I can't even describe what she means to me at this point, but thank you for that conversion of that position. Katie Fox, and then on payroll, Chris Fowler and Sue Rapp. Amy's assistant, Liz Tedisco, works with a lot of the professional hires. Donna Manzoli came out of retirement to help us get folks in, and Nick Hawes, who is the benefits coordinator on the town side. Just these are all terrific people, and it does take a lot of people. So while I'm sitting here giving the report, it's really due to the efforts of a lot of people. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Colleagues, questions or comments? Mrs. Fritz.
Thank you, Barbara. It's a lot, 136 hires in a short amount of time. So thank you for all the work and all the staff that did that. I do have one question around the increase in 24 additional in the para. Do we have a budget cost for that increase?
Yeah, I think if you did it sort of back the envelope, and I might ask Mr. Collins to check my math, but I'm thinking it's perhaps about $25,000 a role. We do know that in the first part of this year we had not even come up to the budgeted level, and that would certainly balance out some of the cost of that. So I don't know if
Sure, and yeah, obviously it's more than anticipated in terms of FTE and headcount. Right now, as Ms. Malone was talking about, we are still tracking under budget for that category of staff due to the vacancy rate. And so, while it is certainly more than expected, I'm not, standing here right now alarmed about it because of the vacancy rate. In terms of a financial perspective, obviously we want to get the positions filled as soon as we can. But because of the labor market being so tight and so difficult to get these positions filled, it's not as if we're going to fill them all next week or next month even. And unfortunately, we still do experience during the school year some turnover in these positions. So certainly, when I do provide a budget update to the school committee towards the middle part of the year, we'll certainly make mention of that and highlight that. Right, but right now, we are still tracking. Right now, with our current staff, we're still tracking under budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I knew he could answer that better than I could.
Yeah. Mr. Wensky.
Yeah, just thank you for the presentation. I think this is a good news story if you're following the news. As you said, this is not happening in many districts to be 98% full, with 98% of positions filled, and quite a busy summer for you and Lindsay and the staff that you referenced. So thank you to all of you to going through almost 1,700 applicants over the summer, and then filling 136 positions is outstanding. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment from me. I want to just express my appreciation for the continued focus on diversity as you do your very difficult work to search and make sure we have the best candidates in these positions. I appreciate the continued focus on diversifying our staff and looking forward to the report later this year on the ongoing teacher diversification project. So thank you for that continued focus. Dr. Sawyer.
I want to thank Barb and her team for the work that she's did along with the other members of the district leadership team who all led different various searches over the course of the spring and into the summer, in particular the special education team and student services team around the work around paraprofessionals and child-specific assistance in particular. That's been a very difficult area, as has been reported, and they're continuing to do some really excellent work trying to address that. In the school committee's packet, it wasn't part of the slide presentation, but I just want to reference, and for those watching, Ms. Malone provided, and her team, and Katie Fox, I know, put this together, this part, the human resource assistant, the education qualifications of all of our professional hires. And certainly, just looking on paper, you can see the level of high qualifications that these educators have. What I can tell you, I had the opportunity to meet with each of the professional level hires, which was how many? I think it was about 60 some odd positions. But in terms of the quality of these individuals, you could tell that our search committees did a really thorough job and really thoughtful about trying to select people who were a good match for our core values as a school district. The initial feedback I'm receiving so far is that overall, our new staff are doing quite well, that's the vetting process and the personnel process we go through is an incredibly high leverage piece of how we maintain high quality schools by getting the best people we possibly can to be working with our kids. So I want to thank everyone who's part of all those searches, and we're looking forward to working with all these new staff over the course of this year, and hopefully for very long careers for them here in Shrewsbury. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malone.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is under Finance and Operations. It is a report and vote to accept grants for fiscal year 23 federal grants. By way of background, federal and state entitlement grants are an important source of funding for our school operations. Entitlement grants are established and allocated at the state and federal level. Entitlement grants are non-competitive and are awarded automatically on the basis of defined formulas that differ by grant. We have in our meeting materials a report that includes the amount of funding the district is receiving in FY23 for each of these programs, as well as a 5-year history. We're joined by Mr. Collins, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, who will summarize this information for the committee. So, Mr. Collins, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Palich, and you did an excellent job summarizing the information here. This is an annual report to the school committee and part of the regulatory environment where the school committee needs to take a vote in order to accept these entitlement funds. As you referenced, these are federal and state funds that are allocated based upon student enrollment, student demographics, and also the level of funding that is provided on an annual basis by the federal government, which changes year to year, of course. So for fiscal 23, As of this writing, at this point, we are at, in terms of the total grant funds, $2,211,194. That's just about $1.7 million less than fiscal '22, 43% decrease, and that's because in fiscal '22, like all other school districts across the nation, we were also allocated additional funding due to the pandemic, and so those were one-time grants and not to be, carried forward, or reallocated, if you will, into succeeding fiscal years. So that's really what accounts for that drop-off. So if you were to actually look back to pre-pandemic levels like fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, you can see that $2.2 million is just slightly more than the pre-pandemic level. So we're kind of back to level set, if you will, post-pandemic. These grant funds are used for a variety of different purposes. They're mostly targeted funding for special education services. The large grant, the IDEA grant, $1.7 million grant, is primarily used for out-of-district transportation services and also some professional development services for our staff. Other grants are used for the 140 grant, teacher quality grant, is used for teacher mentoring stipends. The early childhood education, special education grant is used to offset salaries for the preschool director and school psychologist at Parker Road Preschool. And the Title I grant, the State Code 305, is used for math and reading tutoring services at several of our schools. So finally, the Comprehensive School Health Services Grant, that was not an allocation or an entitlement grant. That was a competitive grant that was written by Mrs. Belcito and Mrs. Freeman. So that is a 10-year award, and those funds are being used to provide salaries for a school adjustment counselor and then also additional nursing services. So kudos to them for writing that and being awarded that grant for the district. So that's in summary the report. Again, it's $2.2 million, really important, vital funding for the school district that had we not received those funds, we'd be either not providing the services or providing the services and at the expense of the local taxpayer. So happy to answer any questions you might have on this, and it does require a vote, and the suggested language is at the bottom of your meeting packet.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Colleagues, questions or comments?
Nope.
Thank you for the report. Dr. Sawyer, anything to add?
I just want to thank Mr. Collins for his continued outstanding financial management of all these different funding sources, along with his team, Kim Fitzpatrick, and in particular. It's sometimes convoluted and bureaucratic in terms of how these kind of processes have to go in terms of grant reports and the like, and I do appreciate wherever we can, we're trying to access even some of these competitive funds like the ones that Ms. Bilsito and Ms. Freeman were able to procure a couple of years ago. It's making a significant difference for us. So we try to be very judicious about knowing whether or not we ultimately will be eligible for a grant funding source or not. But it is a significant amount of resources for us to be able to utilize, and we do our best to make sure we're administering it as effectively as we can. So appreciate the report and ask that the school committee vote to accept them.
Thank you, Dr. Sawyer. So we do need to take a vote to accept our grant funding. I would entertain a motion that the committee vote to accept all FY23 grant funds noted in our enclosed chart and to utilize such funds for their intended purpose.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is under new business, the appointment of the superintendent as a representative to the Assabet Valley Collaborative Board of Directors. By way of background, the mission of the Assabet Valley Collaborative, AVC, is to provide effective and efficient services to meet current and evolving needs of member communities to promote student success and community integration. Its board of directors meets monthly. Per state law and regulation, the collaborative agreement, each year the school committee must vote to appoint the superintendent as representative to the Assabet Valley Collaborative Board of Directors. I will turn it over to Dr. Sawyer for any additional information here.
There's just an annual requirement under the law and the collaborative agreement to formally have the committee appoint me as the district representative on the board of directors. Our first meeting of the new school year is actually this coming Friday, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the executive director of Assabet, Kathy Cummins, her team, and the other superintendents of the member Assabet Valley collaborative communities in Central Mass. It's a good group, and it's an important organization that benefits the district. So would appreciate the school committee checking the box and allowing me to serve in that role again this year.
Colleagues, questions or comments on this topic? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion that the committee vote to appoint Dr. Joseph M. Sawyer, Superintendent of Schools, as our representative to the Assabet Valley Collaborative Board of Directors for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. We received under separate cover from Ms. McCollum the minutes of our meeting held on September 14th, 2022. Colleagues, were there any questions, concerns, corrections, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, without objection, those are accepted. We do need to go into executive session this evening. I would entertain a motion that the committee adjourn to executive session for the purpose of addressing Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. Purpose 7, open meeting law. General Law is Chapter 30A, Section 22FG, for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and or releasing executive session minutes, and for the purpose of addressing General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Purpose 3, the Shrewsbury Education Association Units A and or B, the Shrewsbury Paraprofessional Association and or the Cafeteria Workers Association, where deliberation in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and return to open session only for the purpose of adjourning for the evening.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. This requires a roll call vote to pass. Mrs. Fritz.
Aye.
Mr. Wensky.
Aye.
Ms. Boucher.
Aye.
Mr. Palich, aye. Thank you.